All right, welcome back to the channel. So, Paulie Malinaggi adds his 2 cents to the Devin Haney issue and completely and utterly exposes himself and what I believe to be the real reason that anybody would be remotely insulted by what Devin Haney said. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. So, Devin Haney, former WBC champion. And matter of fact, while I'm doing this, let me add Devin Haney to this list that I'm about to read off to you. So, Devin Haney says something in an interview to 78 Sports TV that caused a lot of uproar. He said that he would never lose to a European fighter. Now, by European, I mean the colloquial term that starts with a W and ends with an E. You know what I mean. Now, Devin Haney issued an apology from it. A bit of a half-hearted apology related to the use of the phrase, but still, he apologized for it. Now, I did a video earlier about the apology itself, and I mentioned what I thought the real reason that people would be offended by what Devin Haney had to say. And it was not the word that he used. It wasn't the phrase that he used. It was the idea that he communicated. And the idea that he communicated was that he was better than that type of fighter. That's what I believe could possibly be could be the only possible reason that anybody would actually get offended by it, because the word WHITE is literally on people's birth certificates, and it is what they use to refer to themselves. But you can trust Paulie Malinaggi to let you know, bumbling out of his mouth, the words that you need to hear to tell you what it is that offended him. And so Paulie Malinaggi's asked about this, and Paulie Malinaggi doesn't talk about the word HWITE. He talks about why Devin Haney would say it. And he said that if this was the 70s, 80s, and 90s, then he could say it because it would have been true. But now, the day of the African-American fighter is over. That's what Paulie Malinaggi said. The day that black fighters would dominate sports, boxing, is over. And he says that it is now the Eastern European, and I'm using his words, are the dominant species in boxing. Now, let me tell you, there's about a million things Paulie Malinaggi should apologize for in that statement. First of all, we're not a species. There's the human species. There's not different species. There's different nationalities, different groups of people. However, the idea that Eastern Europeans are the dominant group of people in the sports in boxing is ludicrous on its face. But yet he believes that that is the truth, and that's what he, a noted boxing commentator, let flop out of his mouth. Now, that's what I said in my video was what made people upset, if anything, about what Devin Haney said, because he rubbed in their faces that he believed that he was better than they are, that he would not lose to any of them. That is the issue. But then Paulie Malinaggi comes out and says what everybody, at least I and many other people, have known that he wants and they want to be the case, by saying that black fighters are not dominant in the sport of boxing anymore, that they used to be, that the day, similar to what Larry Merchant said, which was called Deontay Wilder the last black hope, the last black champion that will come out of America. Those type of comments, that's what Larry Merchant said. This is what Paulie Malinaggi said, but yet they're not going to have to issue any apologies for what they said. But before I say that Paulie Malinaggi needs to apologize for what he said, let me point out to why that is clearly not the case. Because all you have to do is go look at who the champions are in boxing, and you will discover something very interesting when you compare Eastern European fighters. By the way, Eastern European can be 5 or 6 different countries. But let's just say Eastern European and black fighters. Let's count the champions. Of the champions in boxing that could be considered black, that are black fighters. Because remember, what Devin Haney, he didn't say that there wouldn't be any Eastern European that would fight him, that would beat him. He didn't say there will not be any British fighters that will beat him. He didn't say there won't be any Euro-American fighters that would beat him. He said that all-inclusive WHITE, none of them will beat him. So let us look at these Eastern Europeans, and let's look at Paulie Malinaggi said was this, the dominant group in boxing. And let's look at the black fighters and see how many champions there are. There are right now, 4 Eastern European champions. You have Lomachenko, Beterbiev, Bradis at cruiserweight, and Bivol at light heavyweight. There may be one guy down in the bottom part of the maybe what's his name? Let's see what this guy's name is. I do believe Ahmed Debelioff, whatever his name is. I don't know how to pronounce that, but that guy will do he's from Uzbekistan. So you got 4. You've got 6. Lomachenko, Beterbiev, Bradis, and down in a lower weight class, you have Akhman Dayalov, a Uzbekistan fighter that at super bantamweight, and quite honestly, dog, I think he looks more Asian than anything else. So I don't know. Is Uzbekistan is kind of more Asian than Eastern European, but let's just throw that name out there and say the guy from Uzbekistan too. So you got on these different countries, you have one guy from Beterbiev is Russian. Bradis, I do believe, is German, so I don't even know if that counts as Eastern European. Bivol, who is Russian, and then you have a guy from Uzbekistan. So you have 6 total champions that could be in all of boxing that could be considered Eastern European. Let's go through the black champions. You have heavyweight Joshua Dorticos at cruiserweight, Andrade at 168 pounds, Rosario at 154 pounds, Charlo at 154 pounds, Spence at 147 pounds, Crawford at 147 pounds, Herring at 130 pounds, Stevenson at 126 pounds, Gervonta Davis with a secondary belt at 135 pounds. You have Jamal Charlo at 160 pounds, and you have Devin Haney, who should be the 13 for Devin Haney, who should be the WBC champion, but is the WBC champion in recess. He did not lose his belt in the ring. He was moved to champion in recess. So right now you've got 13-5. Last time I checked, 5, really 4, because Uzbekistan questionable, but throw it and say 5. You have borderline nearly 3 times as many fighters black fighters as champions as you have Eastern Europeans. But somehow in Paulie Malinaggi's mind, that means that they are dominating the sport of boxing. They are the dominant ones. Absolutely, positively ridiculous based on the numbers, but not ridiculous based on what he wants to happen. So even talking about Devin Haney, he talked about Devin Haney as if Devin Haney was he has Devin Haney as being an underdog to Luke Campbell. It's just, dude, that's what it was about. Period. That's what's offensive about it. And listen to what he said. Maybe that was true in the 80s, the 70s, 80s, 90s. What about the 2000s? Last time I checked through the 2000s, you had Floyd Mayweather Jr., you had Andre Ward, What happened is you have a marketing of Eastern Europeans because those are the people that Bob Arum and HBO and those guys wanted to start marketing because they don't believe that black fighters were marketable. And you have all of the divisions of these belts, 4 different belts. All of them have 2-3 different championships. So you never actually even know who the best fighter is in a division. So, like I said, that is, but look what Paulie Malinaggi said. He said the day of the African American, or he said African American, I'm saying black. The day of the black fighter being the dominant fighter has been over, according to Paulie Malinaggi, for 20 years. Paulie Malinaggi, we have the same amount of champions, black American or black national champions that we have right now, the same amount of champions we had in the 1990s. There's literally no difference in the effectiveness of black fighters vis-a-vis anybody else that there was in the early 2000s or the 1990s. But what has changed are people like boxing marketing people pushing guys like Gennady Golovkin. Is Gennady Golovkin one of these great fighters that are back? Get out of here. Gennady Golovkin, Monster Inoue. You've got people like Chocolatito getting thrown up on pound for pound lists. Man, get out of here. There ain't no doubt you have black Americans dominating weight classes from 100, where normal sized people fight, from 147 pounds through 160 pounds, and ain't changed at all. Continue to be the best, the most dominant fighters there, except for you will have, and like you've always had, you've had a Mexican fighter that was an extremely talented fighter like a Jose Luis Castillo, like a Julio Cesar Chavez or Salvador Sanchez, or a South American like Carlos Monzon. You've always had a bunch of very, very solid fighters that came out of Mexico, that come out of South America. You're always going to have times where you have really good fighters come out of the UK, whether that is a Joe Calzaghe or whether it's a Tyson Fury or what have you. But as far as black boxing goes, there has not been a drop off in the least. The only drop off has been in the perception of black fighters as a result of what the media wants to push. And for Paulie Malinaggi to say something as ridiculous as the Eastern European is the dominant species in boxing, and the day of the black fighter is over, is far more offensive and more ridiculous than anything that Devin Haney said. Let's wait around for the apology. You're not going to get one, and ain't nobody going to ask Paulie Malinaggi for one. But anyway, it is what it is. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.